The True Project presents.
Today I'm going to be talking about ableism and what I've learned as a person with kidney failure about ableism. I didn't even know what ableism was until I started my disability studies. Ableism has been an issue for generations. Thankfully, because of the ADA and hundreds of other disability activism in our history and up until today, we've been able to address and tackle some of the issues that have resulted from ableism. Disability is the biggest minority group in the world. A lot of people don't realize this because there isn't a set definition of disability. If there was, and there has been in the past, which we've come to realize that by setting a definite definition, this in itself isolates and creates this image of this culture of what disability is supposed to be. A lot of times people associate disability with physicality. A lot of people look at me and think because I don't look sick or I don't have a physical impairment means that I don't have a disability. A lot of times people associate disability as a physical impairment. Or if they look at me and I tell them about my kidney failure and having an invisible disability, because of my invisible disability and not being able to see my disability, they automatically think that because I don't look sick or I don't have a physical impairment means that I am not disabled. And this further leads to this idea that disability is an inability to complete something or to carry out something. These stereotypes and stigmatisms have been around for generations and still continue today nationally. More often than not, people with disabilities, especially women with disabilities, are targeted and even mutilated in certain cultures. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time in our history that this has happened, and even today. During the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, people with disabilities were often placed in camps and tortured and sterilized. Dating back to slavery, African Americans who were deemed to have deformities or disabilities were often not sold or killed off and seen as unfit. This idea of disability being an inability or unwanted has not only been transparent in our past, but continues to be an issue today for people with disabilities wanting to try to break these stereotypes and barriers and get jobs and insurance. In order to move forward as a disability community, we need all of the communities to be inclusive, and unfortunately, in communities, not all communities prioritize people with disabilities. During Hurricane Katrina, thousands of people died, and especially elderly people and people with disabilities, because they weren't prioritized in the evacuation plan. These moments in our history, and even today, with the physical barriers that people with disabilities have to try and overcome, such as not having ramps or accessible CTAs, or even being institutionalized. These little moments show that we still have a lot of work. We shouldn't have to ask to be prioritized. We shouldn't have to ask to be able to live a life of independence or being supported in our community. We shouldn't have to ask to be considered human and have basic rights as everyone else who does or doesn't consider themselves disabled. We are not the problem. We are not a problem that needs to be fixed. The system and the stereotypes and stigmatisms that have developed about this definition of disability being a deformity or inability, this needs to be fixed. But in order to make this change, there needs to be an attitudinal change. There needs to be a perspective shift on how we look and approach disability in our society, whether that be physical barriers or our environment. There needs to be more exposure to disability. There needs to be advocacy and education on disability history. Disability has completely altered the world we live in. Without disability, there wouldn't be any cut curbs, and now it's the new normal. Today, disability is beautiful. It's taking pride in what we live with every day, even though we shouldn't have to overcome anything. Disability isn't something we have to overcome. Disability is a community. Disability is numbers. It's in different races and ages and sexes. Disability is all inclusive. I wish I could just stick to one topic, but disability and the history itself it influences all of us. It changes everything that we know. And it's impossible to stay onto one subject because disability involves everything and everyone. And that is what we need to do. Disability is all around us. Disability is all around us, and we can't ignore it anymore. Hi, my name is McKeely Malas. I am 21 years old. I currently go to UIC and study disability studies and theater performance with a minor in communications. I have a kidney failure, and I am unapologetically disabled.